Daniels here. Correctivity for homeostasis and thereby autonomy and sovereignty for European genus and species. In practical terms, structured by a concept of unionization, structuring accountability, coherence, correctivity, agency. For our peoples, DNA nations. Okay, tonight I wanted to, among other things, comment on or answer some questions that I was asked in the chat that I didn't get to yesterday, and comment on some things about the stream. But first, perhaps how a better understanding might have come about. Not that anything was so bad. But one of the things that I might be advised to do in upcoming streams is to just read from my my website at a leisurely pace. Make my way through the various posts, because I would imagine the audience is very much like me. They don't really like to read that much. They prefer to listen. I understand that. And there's a lot of writing there. And some of it is a lot of it is quite turgid, and I can take my time and help you to make sense of it, because it's important. And that would stave off, that might help stave off some of the annoying feedback that I've gotten. I'll come back to that. Let me just look at or read for you some of the material that I've begun to introduce into my Twitter thread, taken from postings at DNA Nations. This is an old one that I posted at Majority Rights a long time ago, almost 10 years ago. Paul Weston, an activist on behalf of Native British interests in the UK, of course. Well, he's not going to go to the kosher question a whole lot. Although when he spoke to me, he did acknowledge that these were not European people, they're Middle Eastern, which I thought was significant. He's broached some significant, really radical issues at times, or made some radical decisions at times, although those videos are taken down, and he's almost had to draw back on some of it. For example, he made a video I was impressed by one time called "I Am a Racist." Anyway, that video is none of it. Paul Weston was arrested, I think it was 2014, might have been 2013, for reciting Churchill's speech on Muslims in front of Winchester Abbey. He was arrested for hate speech for reciting Churchill. The most respected Briton of all time voted. He got up with a megaphone in front of Winchester Abbey, and he was arrested for hate speech reciting Churchill. That was a great tour de force. So that's on DNA Nations. Then I didn't realize how in remiss I was about my post on the suggestion that we should work on alliances with Asian ethnostates, markedly Japan, Korea, perhaps Vietnam. And I've brought some of the imagery and comments from that I've cleaned up that post and put in some of the imagery that was missing and so on. One image that I have there is the this meme that the Russian Federation is bigger than Pluto. Interesting to note. This thing is huge, and the point is, it's not an ethno-state, and we as ethno-nationalists need to take note of that, and those who are advocating or defending Russia and Putin and so on should take note that this is an empire which is laying dubious claim to territories justifiably accused of being a imperialist, aggrandizing kleptocracy. Their population, they really have a difficulty covering this land, obviously. Most of it is west of the Urals. There's a few pockets here and there. And I've got there's this cartoon here of a Russian guy in the Adidas the Adidas dry with 2 vodka bottles sprawling out over this vast expanse that's bigger than Pluto. That's maybe a bit mean, but right now I think the Russian Federation deserves to take it on the chin. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if Kevin McDonald or who it is. I don't provide any justification for Russia doing this. There's been some provocation. I don't approve of Azov Battalion or anybody else sending rockets into the eastern part of Ukraine either. But if anything, Putin should have marched troops just into that part and said, okay, no more bombing here. Otherwise, we're going to send rockets from here there to there, something like that. But not bombing all of Ukraine. No excuse. Another thing that I've heard a lot of Western commentators, Stephen Cohen was one, and there have been others. Because I can't remember exactly. I'm not going to name. I'm going to just arbitrarily stab for names that of people who might have said this thing, but it's typical of right-wing critics so disillusioned with the West that they want to believe that Zog merely overthrew a freely elected Putin lackey in 2014 with the Maidan. Now, this is the same Yanukovych whose opponent, Yushchenko, was poisoned with dioxin at the behest of Putin. For what he thought of his boy not being, quote, freely elected. So how democratic was Yanukovych being elected in 2014? And Cohen saying this is, America was in remiss of its standing by democratic rule. I don't think so. And everybody knows that. Everybody's seen Yanukovych's ultra extravagant digs, and they know about Manafort and the Trump's campaign manager and the billions involved there, and how he promised he would bring Ukraine towards the European Union and then was called back by Putin at the last minute, saying, no, you're going to stay under Russian auspices. So, I mean, there's more that this is now a typical argument that about how hypocritical that the West is, and how indeed dubious or how undemocratic it was for Zelensky to be put in there. And that's true too. But that's not to not to say they're saying that Putin's puppet, Putin's boy, was put in there democratically, and that's not true either. That's the point. So now we're coming up to the news of the day, or from the Polish point of view, which is bad news of the day. Which is that Poland's President Duda, his utterly foolish embrace of Zog puppet Zelensky. with his reckless head-on warmongering, Zelensky's that is, using the rigidity of the Banderas, But let me go. Let me go to. I'm getting ahead of myself because I was criticized unfairly by a friend. Now let me take it. Let me I oh by a friend in Poland. Now she kind of took it back when I explained it to her that she didn't understand the situation. And this is part of what I'm doing this program for is I'm realizing that people I'm talking with and to a lot of people who don't know a lot about what I've been doing, saying about my posts, um, and so and yet they'll comment in kind of a knee-jerk, uninformed way. And this happened with this Polish lady friend of mine. First, I'll read the kind of apology she gave me. She said, "I needed to hear it from you. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I unintentionally offended you. Take care." Okay. Now, what she said to begin with was funny that anti-abortion issues initially emerged in Poland about 2 or 3 years ago, and you didn't have an opinion then, up until now. Why are you so concerned about the U.S. and not Poland? I don't think that, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not alone on this. We need foreign commentators on unrelated issues concerning unrelated countries here in Poland, where we care about Polish issues, not foreign ones. Well, this was an unfair comment and an uninformed comment because, first of all, my platform and my position is an advocate of all European peoples and nations, genus and species. Species would, of course, be one would be the Polish nation. Um, Now, because I advocate all European nations, I've got to focus on the most radical concerns, ones that would be of concern to all and any nation. And generally, right, that means that I've basically got to keep my eye on the elephant in the room issues. I depend when it. I would depend on Polish people to help out with more detail where they might. And the fact is that I've had to defend Poland, and I've taken tremendous abuse from the neo-Nazi type of reactionaries that abound in the white reactionary sphere. Unfortunately, that perspective, perspective of oversympathy for reasons I've specified, is overrepresented in the white reactionary sphere. So it's an unfair remark, anyway, to suggest that I haven't been doing my part to defend Poland where it's being where it needs defending. And I say, and I did put up an article about the Polish abortion issue, more than one, upon your sending me the articles. In fact, back in the days where I was at Majority Rights, I've had to defend Poland numerous times and suffered tremendous abuse by the pro-Nazis among white reactionaries. You may think that I have not done my part, but you are exponentially wrong. I've had no support from Poles, by the way. I don't really know why that's happened. I'm a little surprised by it, but that's the fact. It's weird, but I've gotten no help rhetorically, politically, like that. I'm not making a big deal out of that, but that's true. And I've got a lot of abuse, over the years from from Nazi types. I defend Poland and speak of issues relevant to Poland, along with all European nations and peoples, whether they are here in Europe or in diaspora. The most pressing issue for Poland now is Duda's utterly foolish embrace of Zog puppet Zelensky and his reckless head-on warmongering, using the rigidity of the Banderas, as you know, no friends of Poland. I mean, Bandera, this is the inspiration of the Azov battalion, right? Slaughtered whole Polish villages of men, women, and children. That's what lovely guy that he is. And yet, Zelensky will, of course, typical of his ilk, deploy their over-the-top rigidity, their right wing. No account. Natural fallacy. To engage in the kosher harvest of war and the destruction of European peoples, to fight Putin, who is in his own way an extended phenotype of those interests, whether through support by oligarchs, Lubavitch, or Israel outright, and indirectly by mindset misdirecting right-wingers from America. This is pushing Poland into a situation where Putin could try to do great harm to Poland and Polish people. I have my eye on the profound interests of Poland indeed, and have done so without much help rhetorically, politically. You and your tremendous generosity aside, I used the microphone you gave me, and it works great. Just to name one thing. But also, if ethno-nationalism, including Polish ethno-nationalism, is not balanced in response to Putin's egregious invasion, then, well, look for Zog and their liberal lackeys to turn the suburbs of Warsaw into the suburbs of Paris. So Magda, I have concerns of Poland very much at heart. Then I go into some ancient personal grievances. Oh, and while I've had good will from you, Mache, and others, in a practical sense, I've also suffered great destruction from the criminality of Thomas Petzahova, Maya Majeko, Oscar Matijek, and others, primarily aided and abetted by the mocking likes of Roman Schneider, Lucinda Stachowiak, Gregor Smarodny, and Andrei Harvest. And still I defend Poland and Polish people, despite the fact that we have some very bad ones in our ranks who have done me great harm. I'll maybe talk about that later. Some of the bad experiences that I had here, but I just wanted to mention that that I'm doing this and I'm defending Polish people in Poland, despite the fact that I've endured some brutal treatment here. Not just from, in other words, not just from other nations and not neo-Nazis, but from the very people that I've been called upon to defend, more often than I would like, because that's not really what I want to do. I'm not well suited to be focused on Polish nationalism. I'm a defender of all European peoples and nations, whether they're and peoples, whether they're here in Europe or in diaspora. It's a dead ringer that I don't like, going by my mother's maiden name, Sienkiewicz. So people are going to say, "Oh, all you care about is Poland," when you're forced in certain circumstances to say, "No, this is not true." Um, Poles did not kill 57,000 Germans between World War I and II, and nothing remotely like that, which is what this idiot Goodrich is saying outright Goebbels propaganda. Scrolling slowly down the screen in the quote greatest story never told, this idiot that OV thinks that I should want to talk to, and then I'm a bad closed-minded person because I don't want to talk to him. Like I said, people aren't. There's some problem with the fact that people aren't familiar with all I've done in posting and podcasting and also the work that I've done over the years to come to the insights and understandings that I have. I'm not I'm not condemning people, but I do need to explain this because I'm seeing that the people don't that I'm not going to say this. Then I'm assuming that I'm assuming a little more familiarity with what I'm saying, and some people coming into this are both newer to the cause, don't know much about what I've been saying, and I've come up through, and also have come by way of unhelpful perspectives, and and so I've rendered questions and comments that would be insulting, but this is the kind of thing that a teacher, an older teacher, is going to become a little bit used to and can understand how to deal with. Now, I'm referring, besides Magda's comments, which I've already addressed. I'm referring to a remark from Snork yesterday that I will I'm just gonna I'll put it down to just he doesn't know that much about me, and that's all right. Uh, uh, but it was this, and I will put it this way. I was explaining Heidegger and his place in postmodernity, what it meant, and how our interests are being misdirected by the usual suspects, um, under the auspices of criticizing the left. Now, I'm right, and what I'm saying is important, and I know it. But and furthermore, I also know that what I'm saying is not going to be impossible to understand for general audiences. When you're hearing some of the things I'm saying for the first time, because they are different from what's become a mainstream of white reactionary that's buying into the provided box. It might seem complicated, but it's not. You'll begin to see, understand the concepts and patterns as I repeat them as often as necessary. It's not completely simple. There's complexity there and elaboration where necessary, explanation of these concepts and elaborations where necessary. But when you're hearing it for the first time, it might sound, because I'm getting into the real stuff, as if I'm being unnecessarily turgid, show off-ish. The 10 staff, I'll try to say that too. It's like, oh, they're using this jargon. No, I'm not using unnecessary jargon and whatnot. That's bullshit. The point is that I know that what I'm saying is good and important, and I know that it's intelligible, and that it's not extraneous. And yet, a person who's not very familiar with my efforts might think so. And this is the remark that I wanted to come to. That could have been, if I was a younger person at this, very annoying. After going into explanation, after my going into an explanation about how what postmodernity is supposed to do, you're supposed to be able to manage the best of tradition, put aside the worst of tradition, put aside the worst of modernity, and introduce the best of modernity, both in service of maintaining your inherited forms and way of life. Okay, that's what postmodernity is supposed to do. It's not really complicated, but it's very important. And people are at a loss, and into stupid traditionalism or de facto modernity if they don't realize this concept. It has to be explained. And so it was, and like I said, it's not all that complicated, but it's important, and that's just part of it. But of the several important ideas that we're setting out here. And Snork remarks, oh, well, that's, I have the simple way that cuts through all of this. Just We need to tell people, there's evil and that's bad. Well, um, that, you know, I think that, like I said, I think it's just because he's not familiar enough with what I've done, and I don't expect people to be. I don't expect them to read my stuff. Like I said, that's why I'm saying that I'm going to take to reading my material in days to come. I don't expect them to be overly familiar, and I don't expect them necessarily to understand in context why the things that I'm saying are important and different, and not to be pushed aside for something simpler because, quote, the normies won't understand it. I did tell him that if you want a simple idea that's important for them to get a hold on, and they can't get over their aversion to the word left. I understand that because it's been represented a certain way over and over again, despite the depth grammar being what it is, which is about unionization and coalition building of unionizations. That just give them the underlying concept. Don't call it the left. But I call it the left. I will continue to use the word left for a reason, for several reasons, but among them is that it puts off some of the worst and misguiding people that there are. And people should take note, and I'm going to come next to the other commenter that I want to address. They should take note that there is a reason why our enemies want us to identify as right wing. Have always called our identity right wing and far right, and there's a reason why they want us to oppose the left. That should be clear enough for you. Okay, so Snork, by the way, who my opinion is not. I don't want this to sound like I'm down on him at all. I'm very impressed by him. This discussion that he made of the Exodus story was marvelous, and as well as his observations across the board. Just because I had this one thing that I wanted to call attention to doesn't mean that I'm down on him. It just means that he might not be up to date on the curve that I'm on. That's all, and it's okay. He will be, but then again, neither is this a friend of his, I guess you could call it. Thor mit uns is his handle. Who asked me some questions and showed to me that neither was he ahead of the curve. It's okay. I mean, it's like I'm in a pretty much teacherly position, And so I shouldn't expect people to just know everything, and not, of course, about me either and what I've been saying. And it could be very annoying in the questions that Thor Mithuns asked me. Well, there's two aspects to it. In the worst case scenario, the guy thinks he doesn't respect me at all, and he thinks that just some incidental idiot to be pushed aside. He's asking me. I look forward to your next show, Daniel. I'm very interested in your philosophical mentors. I tossed out a comment that I have better philosophical mentors than Richard Spencer, and that's putting things too simply, really, from my part, as to how I've come about my positions and understanding of things. And I'll get to that in a minute, but I'm going to come back to a few remarks of his that show me that he's not really in position to take me for granted and push me and push my voice aside and sort of go right to the quote, right to my quote sources. And those clues are this. Here, I would like to transcend the left-right paradigm. Now, I could pull my hair out hearing that, and if there was ever a remark that indicates that someone doesn't know anything about me and appreciate some of the better things that I've done, am doing, that would be it. I mean, because what our enemies, or what, the YKW, so to speak, the position that they want us to take, of course, to begin with, is, but they want us to be liberals, to open our borders and boundaries, to be open to having our borders and boundaries open. That's what they would like to begin with. Just, we drop dead. Okay? Since they know that that's not going to happen by dint of nature, there's going to be resistance to that. The second position they want us to take is right wing, and to react rigidly beyond praxis, to search for pure warrants against their rhetoric, whether above nature in some concept of God or principles, or the tyrant, the exception, or within nature itself, below human correctivity. Again, that's just the way it is. No account beyond that. And And they can manipulate this and infiltrate by means of that. Like they're manipulating that they've manipulated the Azov battalion, for example. Like this Zelensky regime has done. This Operation Clean Break regime. Failing that, when people start scratching their heads, you get this utterly people think that they're really clever. They're really above it all, and it's typical, it's common to say, I want to get beyond the left and right paradigm, or the phony left-right paradigm. That's what they want you to say. That's what the YKW want you to do, if failing the other two options. Because that keeps us disorganized. It doesn't latch on to the depth grammar of the left, which is unionization and coalition building. The coalition building that might be afforded by structuring accountability and maintenance of homeostasis, which is not supremacist imperialist, and therefore it enables harmony, concordance, coordination with other peoples, i.e. coalition building. For many reasons, to want to get past the left-right paradigm is not a good idea. And it indicates that Thor, maybe another day, but certainly not now, that's one big clue that he's not ahead of my curve anyway. So that's one reason why he's not ready to go to the myriad of my sources, which he will not find my inference there anyway, which is an important inference. Okay, that's just one thing. Is another huge clue that Tor Mit'Uns is not ahead of this curve anyway. We covered it a bit in the show last time. He said that David McGowan is a worthwhile read. I want to read his comment exactly. This, at first blush, this sounds like a trivial issue. The hippies sound like a trivial issue, and they're not. Not for our cause. Where the hell is it? I'm scrolling through these comments. Weird Torment Un says, weird scenes inside the canyon by David McGowan is worth reading regarding hippie culture. Not if you want to understand what's important. Just the opposite. It's hideous misdirection if you want to know what's important for us and about hippie culture. And that he would, at this point, treat that book as if it's good, shows that, like I said, that he's not up to my curve on that important issue anyway, and that he's not familiar with what I've been saying. And how hippies were an important manifestation of an expression of the most fundamental motive on behalf of white people, specifically white males, they're deserving an assignment of some basic intrinsic value, to not be so valueless, intrinsically valueless, as to to be drafted to Vietnam War, in the Vietnam War, to die, which 56,000 of them did, for this war that was of no clear and imminent danger, or this quote threat that was of no clear and imminent danger to our people and nation. David McGowan's thesis in that book was that, and it's totally absurd, that the CIA astroturfed and created the hippie movement in order to, make these youngsters repugnant and turning people off by means of them to the anti-war movement. In other words, it was a right-wing plot or something, a CIA plot. And this is, of course, totally ridiculous. I mean, you could. It's totally ridiculous at its essence, which McGowan states explicitly that there was no organic anti-war movement. I assure you, with all confidence, that not wanting to go to Vietnam, not wanting to be drafted to go and die in Vietnam, is an organic motive. Now, my brother, he went off to Canada. That's an organic motive. McGowan saying there was no organic motive, that the hippies were all a fake thing. Well, that couldn't have been more real. And it's more interesting when it becomes clear to me, and I put up there's a post of this, which I can read another day. Like I said, I'm going to familiarize people with my stuff more on DNA Nations, that David McGowan was hypnotized. He was given a post-hypnotic suggestion to write about this with this angle, that the hippies were a fake CIA op. And that he talks about how they were, closet racists and all this stuff. Where this suggestion is coming from, and the reasons for it, because they don't want people to understand this motivation, that white men should not be cannon fodder and should not be used to go warmongering around the world at the behest of right-wingers and the YKW. It's no coincidence that the day the Vietnam War draft ended, around 1972, that the leniency that was granted to white men to be hippies, to be more relaxed about their being and their life, long hair and all that, the impetus was over. It started to evaporate overnight, which goes to show that the hippie stuff did correspond with being towards death. The most profound concern there could be. And to this day, an issue that is most radical, most fundamental, and most necessary to get right. That is to say, yes, men too, not just women, men too, white men have should have should be assigned intrinsic value, should not be expendable on the basis, of our shared history and accomplishments. We should be given the benefit of the doubt. And that's not to say that we should not be expected to defend our borders and boundaries sooner than women, and with more peril than women. Yes, but not out of habit. And we're talking about defending our borders, not going halfway across the world, on the other side of the world, to Vietnam, for some cockamamie theory of the domino effect, or for Michelin Corporation and tire rubber, whatever. Or that the tradition and habit of war. Well, the American hippies were more. It was more directly authentic there, because they did have that being towards death. But there was an authenticity also in the European hippies, in that it was a generational thing, because you still had the tradition of war, and as a tradition, as a habit, being lorded over younger generations, and they were rightfully skeptical of that. Just as you should be when looking at something like World War One. Okay, anyway, enough said. The point is, when Thor mit uns says that David McGowan is a worthwhile read, he is making it clear to me that he doesn't know what I've been saying, that he's not up to the curve, and he's not ready to say the least. He's not ready to. He shouldn't be looking, if he is looking to push me aside and get right to the meat of where I've gotten my stuff, because nobody's saying that for just one big example that I just said. Nobody. So if he were to go to the quote sources, he wouldn't find it anyway. And that's what he did ask me in the end. He said, "I look forward to Daniel. I'm very interested in your philosophical mentors." Now, to put him in the light of the highest criteria, he could be saying that I want to know, some of your background sources so that I can participate a little better. Okay, that that might be still a bit of an insult, and that's why I'm actually not going to do what I said I was going to do, which was, okay, I'll tell you, because really, when I talk about I was using shorthand when I said that I had better philosophical mentors than Richard Spencer. That's not really putting it accurately how I came about the understanding that I have, and the insights that I have. Of course, erudition is a part of it. So you can want to call the the people that I've read, mentors, I've worked with some professors, yes, but even there, um, most with on some issues, yeah, I'm on a few issues, I'm relying heavily on a few guys, but even there, um, there's a marked difference in that I am shaping and crafting in ways that they would not approve of, by the way, uh, ideas for application in the interests of, you know, European peoples and their nationalisms. Um, so you're not gonna find what I'm saying, even if I was to, give you these people in these books directly. Um, Guest worker was a lot like that. That's why I want, I finding him intolerable in the end. He could never believe that, my ideas were largely my own, wrested from various sources, and it's not just professors and books. It's also experience and uh, weighing, ways of talking, sorting it out, talking to people. Um, but it would not do, really someone like Thor Mittuns. I can see that he is not ahead of the curve and should not be looking to move past what I'm saying just yet, especially because he's not going to find, you know, me cutting and pasting things from there, but in fact rendering important uh, ideas in distinction from source materials. Nevertheless, you can. I haven't been obscure either. If someone can be bothered to go to the DNA Nation's website and read, they're going to see some of the sources that I've wrested my ideas from. And in days to come, like I said, I'll read this, so I'm not confronted with this insult that I'm just like, a tedious obstruction to the real stuff. Because the fact is that this is the real stuff that I'm giving you. You're not gonna find it. This is the real important stuff that I'm giving you. You're not gonna find it in my source materials. The best that you might do is, somehow be a more equipped and understanding participant. I fear that might be a bit charitable, and that really people are not giving me due respect. I hate to say it, but there's this guy, Categorical Imperative, who I'm not even going to bother commenting on. He's just antagonistic. Having said all that, I'm not. I don't want to say that I'm down on these guys, and that these are just kind of rookie mistakes that younger people in a more student-like position, who are a bit upstart and wanting to be, important contributors might make. They would not recognize the important differences that I'm making, and they would say, "Oh well, let's push all that aside and just say that all you need to know is how what's evil and what's not." It's not going to, if you talk to a young girl nowadays, she's going to tell you that racism is evil. Now, obviously, that's not going to. You need to know more than that. Even the normies need more than that. But it's people might get nervous. They want to contribute. They might feel that what I'm saying is turgid when they're hearing it for the first time, because it might take a few. It's different, and it might take a few listenings and experiences with me that they don't have. But they'll see that there is redundancy there. There is pattern. It's going to make sense to you, and you'll see why it's important. Okay. Yeah, but I might, but by the same token, I might have been pushing things a little too quickly. For example, saying to Snork, "Oh yeah, I need you guys to help me pull someone like Lena Locktoff aboard the Data Nations project or Ken McDonald." Yes, I want help with that, and Snorkel Blog and others will be a great asset in doing that, I'm sure, still. But I should let things settle in a bit more. And again, created more acquaintance with my ideas so that people are a bit more comfortable and not feeling overloaded and as if this is all over their head, because it's not. It's all intelligible. I've been accused of being obscurantist by, GW accused me of any negative thing, but it's not true. The purpose is expository. It's to make things clear. And I make sense. I make consistent sense. I have no doubt about it. What else did I want to say? Could I say more about abortion? Perhaps. Was the interesting distinction made? Was it by Thomas Aquinas, or was it between the trimester argument that the first trimester is like vegetative, the second is like animal, and only in the third does it start to become more like human? I don't know. And I've made all those arguments as to why I'm pro-choice, but mostly it's just unwanted pregnancies should not be very common anyway, and would not be very common among thoughtful people. Case electors, for example. Okay. Is there anything else that I needed to address today? Just let me take a look through my notes. Oh yeah, a recent little mini podcast or stream by Luke Ford when he was walking around the neighborhood and commenting on miscegenation. And I knew, even before, just from hearing the topic, I knew exactly what he was going to say. And this is bad. And he, Luke, sorry, man, you're way too dishonest, and you're absolute disservice to European people. And yeah, I see you're running an interference for the kosher brethren. Nothing is the fault of the people in power. I know it's all your fault, peon. Including if you're disgruntled about miscegenation, because after all, where Luke Ford walks on the campus of UCLA, for example, all he sees, and he says, "Well, I don't know what people are saying. Well, what I just see all these nerdy white guys, and they're with Asian women. That's all I see around on the UCLA campus. Well, what the hell does he expect to see there? I mean, in terms of interracial couples." And he's doing a really bad thing in this comment. I knew that's what he was going to say. That the interracial couples are all, quote, white guys with Asian women. He's trying to say that the people off campus, the white guys off campus, are hallucinating about the very real phenomenon of white women going with blacks. Just like those who cite marriage statistics. Oh, they're not getting married. No, they don't. They're not getting married. They're just shacking up. Right. And they're not talking about it in polls because they don't have to talk about it. They just do it. Right. This is not a problem. It's not a problem on the UC for Luke Ford and on the UCLA campus and in his community. And when he calls attention to the fact of those white guys who take recourse to Asian women, that's what it's like too. That he's portraying them as the traitors and giving an excuse for the white women in the lower class situations below UCLA to go ghetto. It's just one of the many terrible things, irresponsible, awful things that Luke Ford's doing with his rhetoric. Let's comment on that. And furthermore, I don't care what anybody says. Uh, it's not something that should happen a lot. It's not something that should be approved of. And you got to think of the Asian guys too. But nevertheless, mixing with Asians is not remotely as destructive. Well, look at the difference in the ways of life that are created, for one thing. And white women should anybody should be able to see that. Take a step back and look. Okay. It's awful. To give our most precious treasure and resource away for that. Um, hmm. And to not to be able to do anything and say anything about it. This is what's heart wrenching, not the thought of like some far off time when we don't exist in toto, which is probably not gonna happen anyway. And especially not going to happen when people begin to get on board with this platform with the DNA nations. It definitely won't happen. And we'll have means of accountability, means of ostracism. People want to do that, well, go ahead. But you're not going to impose it on us. Okay, enough of that. Let's see then. It's true that I can go into situations where concern about those issues. I'm in a situation where it seems utterly absurd. You don't see this around. But there are other times and perspectives where no, it's not an objection that's raised loudly enough. It's not a call for recourse that's raised loudly enough. It's what this platform does anyway. It looks after our people. Someone like Eddie Murphy, Page Butcher. This is just abhorrent. I mean, Eddie Murphy already had several children with different black women. And now he's got like 3 with Page Butcher? He shouldn't. Just never mind. Enough said. I mean, and like I said, I just don't want that to be a part of the governance that I'm a part of. Let them live with the consequences of their choices. Don't impose it on me. Or You're the supremacist. You're the would-be slave master, trying to make me suffer the consequences of your imposition. You are the one who is denying agency and humanity if you try to remove my choice not to accept this imposition. And it's no trivial matter when you talk about 41,000 years of evolution and all that's been fought for when our natural means to defend ourselves has been denied. We, as Bowery pointed out, the agreement to uphold the borders called civilization has been reneged upon. And we and our co-evolutionary women are solicited from all angles, pandered to, told that they're bad if they don't betray us, that they're saintly if they do. And while the agreement to maintain our borders has been reneged upon, and we're subject to interlopers from all angles, our part of the bargain, which was that we don't fight over women because we're civilized men, is still very much kept in place. Our hands are tied behind our back. We're not allowed to use our capabilities to fight for our people, for our women. As Bowery was saying, if we obviously could use our technological prowess, what would Mike Tyson be? Mike Tyson would be toast, no matter how tough he might seem. So there you have it. We're still expected to uphold our part of the bargain of so-called civilization. This is going to change because we're going to have borders and boundaries. We're going to rest them by means of the concept of unionization of the DNA nations, and the pivotal matter is citizenship. In the end, there's nothing that we can make official yet. We'll be setting a hypothetical, or not hypothetical, a virtual alternative nationhoods, genus and species, to begin with. Okay, that's about all I wanted to touch on for now. Is that I see that I've been remiss as a teacher in not making it easier for people to understand what I'm saying and thereby why what I'm saying is important. And I think that I can begin to correct that by reading more of my material Because if the people out there are anything like me, I totally understand them. Like reading, it's a strain. It hurts my eyes. Starts torturing my emotions, and I guess I have something like attention deficit. Mind starts wandering off. But if I can listen, it's a lot easier. So I'll take to reading my material so that people will not piss me off by saying like, oh well, who needs that, or whatever, or never mind you. Where did you get this from? Like I copied and pasted it. Anyway, that was the guest worker. Oh my God. He just assumed that I sat there and regurgitated stuff from Marxist professors. It was sometimes I couldn't believe how stupidly insulting he was. Anyway. Okay, yeah, so that's that. I'm going to try to organize a discussion between the three of us. I hope to have a discussion between the three of us. Hopefully next weekend. We'll have Per Norden, Snork Blog, and Mirth. And I'll take a step back. I won't try to push things along so quickly. Say, hey, let's go. Let's get some of the bigger voices on board right away. Just take more time to get comfortable with these guys because they're all really smart. They really, really are. Yeah, okay. So that's all for now. Thank you, my broad audience out there, and we'll see you soon. Next weekend at latest. If there's some reason to talk sooner, we will. Okay, and bye for now.